grief just kind of consumed me and kind of just took hold of me. And that's where running was. And that was my first realization of the power that running had for me in a completely different sense than I'd ever seen it before. That drive day to day to live the best that I can live and do the best I can do in anything that I try and get my hands on is because you don't know when you're not going to be able to. I was on social media from like 2012, and that was when, you know, that 2015-16 part, all it was about was sharing all the fun things you were doing. It was that idea that almost that it was bigger than just you, which made you feel part of something. My name is Emma Kirk-Odunubi. I am someone who has a lot of jobs. I am a running strength conditioning coach. I am a group exercise instructor, focused very much on strength and running. Shock. Um, I was a footwear buyer in a past life, so I have a sports science degree and a big interest and focus on gait analysis, injury prevention, and the whole biomechanics of a runner. I'm a columnist for Women's Running, and yes, strings to many bows. So that's kind of, I think, the top things of what I do currently, with other things floating in and out as well.
I love on this podcast, like very, very often I ask people to do that and they like list about 15 jobs and I'm like, that's quite a busy life. And I feel like, yeah, you certainly epitomize that in everything you do. Let's kind of go back, I guess, to start with and talk about those beginnings of your running story and why you kind of ended up with these 15 different jobs, all in a singular space, though, all in the running world. Like, how did you first discover putting on a pair of trainers and getting out the door?
So I always say I put on my first pro trainers when I was a kid. I was a very excitable, energetic child, let's say that. Wanted to try all the things and did everything from like ballet to gymnastics to you name it. If there was a chance to try it, I would try it. And running was just the thing that I just got the most joy from when I was a child. And it was easy. I literally did it, and then I started doing it and racing the boys, and was like, I can beat some of the boys. And that was like my initial sort of getting into it. And then I sort of slightly sidebarred running, because I say I was so interested in all the different types of movement and everything else. And I was on a track and saw people throwing things, and I was like, throwing could be interesting. So I actually picked up discus at secondary school. One of my teachers noticed that I did really well and actually ended up throwing discus nationally from the age of about 13 all the way to my 20s. Um, so that was a big period of my life. And when I was a thrower, I had no interest in running. Like, I was like, "You want me to run 400 meters just to warm up to throw? Absolutely not." And I'd look at all the, like, 1,500 meters and be like, "Why are you choosing to do that? Like, I don't get it. Like, why are you choosing that?" Anyway, long story short, when I got to university in my first year, my dad sadly was diagnosed with a brain tumor. I was 19 just before I went off to uni, and within 6 months from diagnosis, he died. So for me, that was such a obviously traumatic experience. But when I was in the uni bubble, I kind of course, I still grieved, I still struggled, but there was almost like a, okay, well, it's not real because I'm in my little university bubble and things aren't, yeah, it's not real. I then left university, had to get a real life adulting job, and grief just kind of consumed me and kind of just took hold of me. And that's where running was. And I realized that, you know, my sports science brain was like, if I run, it means I have to shower afterwards. If I shower afterwards and after I've run, I must fuel my run. So I've got to eat. And for me, running almost became that kind of, okay, well, if I get out the door and run, then the other two things are boxed off and I start to look after myself better. And that was my first realization of the power that running had for me in a completely different sense than I'd ever seen it before. You know, I'd watched Olympic Games as a kid and always wanted to be in the Olympics. Like that was one of my first things that I wanted when I was, you know, 6, 7, 8. And then now coming into running in this period, it was okay, yeah, running's almost my survival kit. Like running was there when everything else in the world felt chaotic and lost and painful, and just going out on a run and making myself run actually pulled me out from that state. And yeah, ever since it's just been it's been a massive part of my life.
When you first started talking about it then and mentioned about, your childhood and the fact it was the one thing that brought you the most joy, and then obviously it went away for that extended period of time and then it came back again. It's kind of like it's done that now as well, right? Like when you got back into it, it's taken you back to that joyful feeling, that experience. And I think that's something that is clear to see for anybody that follows you across social or has met you in person or has been lucky enough to have a conversation with you. There is that joyful element to running. And is that something that you've always tried to keep? And if things maybe veer away from that from time to time, is that the feeling that you always try and come back to?
Yeah, and it's the I put the magic of running, right? And I think, don't get me wrong, people are always like, "What do you mean you're happy all the time you run?" And I'm like, "No, it's not about that because trust me, there are some days when I very much do not want to get outside and run, especially if I'm training for something. Like it's not what I need, but like either my partner will be like, Emma, I think you need to go and run. Like it will just be in my mood and the way that, life comes in and you have to carry different things and spin different plates. And it's like, no, actually, I just need to get outside because you know that the other side of that run no matter what, you're going to be a better human than you were before you went out. And so for me, it's always that, yeah, sure, in the run itself, I may not be happy, but I know that the feelings thereafter really kind of, yeah, it's that transformative element of, you feel like you succeeded at something and it's just, yeah, those positive endorphins that you get from just moving your body.
And it's so important that anybody that's hearing this now, and look, I'm going to draw on like a personal thing at the moment, is like my life's super super busy. I've got a lot on, and I have never really been in a space where I've had to tell myself like, that this makes you feel better, so you should do it. And everything else around you, in terms of the stuff that is making you busy, will be better because you have done it. But in that space where you're like, I'm overwhelmed, I've got a lot going on, whatever, running sometimes can be the thing that you just think, "Oh, I don't need to do it today. It's fine." When actually, in your heart of hearts that that is always going to make things better. And I'm sure that's something you've experienced as well with the 1,500 jobs that we've just talked about. Like when you've got a deadline here and a deadline there and this client and that client, it would probably be easy for you to say, not today.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the way that I kind of like to utilize my runs, especially if I am training for something, even if I'm not training for something, but I will make that commitment to myself that I will put it in my calendar and I'll be like, right, start of the day, it's there. That 2 hour, 1 hour, 90 minute, 30-minute block, that is going to be from when I run. And anything I put in bookmark before it or bookmark after it, I'm like, okay, well, usually I do it after because I'm like, right, I must get this done so that I can go and do the run. Because it just helps. You probably find it, right? It helps you go, okay, well, I have to do that because the run has to happen then. And you don't kind of put stuff off because you know that that is the time limit that you have because of the busyness of things going around. And if you don't get it done by that point, so it almost kind of drives your, yeah, your, what's the word?
It's a
Need
yeah, like,
to
and it's
complete.
it's like a productivity driver, isn't it? Because 'Cause you're giving yourself
Yes.
those little goals every day to be like, "Right, you need to do this at this point," because as a quote unquote "runner," you understand that if you make those decisions in the other way over and over and over again, that is gonna impact whatever that end goal is, particularly if you're training for a race. If you make "I can't go out for a run," or "I'm not gonna do it today," in your heart of hearts, even if you're trying to tell yourself that it won't impact that end goal, it's going to impact that end goal, isn't it? If you're not um, actually putting your all into it, and I think that's something we've probably all experienced as well, and I'm sure you have. I certainly have. When you kind of you're trying to trick yourself to be like, "I'll be fine. Like it'll be all right. I've run a marathon before. I'll be fine." And then you're on the day and you're like, "Oh yeah, by the way, it's not fine. It's not fine if you don't put the work in. This is dreadful. 26.2 miles is a long way without actually putting some sort of structure into your life."
Most definitely, and I think actually currently in this training cycle that I'm in, I was doing even just 2, 3 weeks ago, a 16-mile run, and I got to, I think, like 12 miles, and I was like, this is really hard. And, I say I have run a fair few marathons, and, like, I got to that point, I was like, "Oh, okay, this is what the training was about, and this is why I do the training." Because I can tell you, I finished that 16 miles and was like, "I have no idea how on earth I'm supposed to run another 10." Like, I've got no
Right.
clue. But deep in my brain, I'm like, "No, logically, you've run these before, so you know how you can." But it is, as you said, that moment you're like, "Oh, okay, we still need to put in the work." It doesn't just happen at the blink of an eye.
Yeah, as much as the body is incredibly special in what it can do, it also will show you pretty quickly regression if you don't kind of give it that stimulus that it needs to have. I want to touch on grief because it's something that is different for everyone, right? And I think at the particular period of your life that you were in when grief struck you to the extent that it did, when was it that you realized, maybe I haven't processed this? Because you said, like, obviously I was in uni, I was 19, I kind of had that shadowing almost of everything because of what you were in and what you were doing at the time. Yeah, what was that moment where you thought, "Oh, wow, like, I actually still haven't dealt with this yet?"
Do you know what? I think, to be brutally honest, probably only about 4 years ago. So as with everyone, I feel like lockdown was a really pivotal moment for a lot of people. One, because of the way that everything was thrust upon us, but two, because you were sitting in your own space. Like, if you weren't a key worker who was out there doing incredible things, keeping the world moving, y- you were sat with your own thoughts a lot of the time. And in that moment, it was the first time I sought out therapy and realized, yes, I knew, I think when I was in it, I knew that it was the feelings I was feeling, but I didn't realize how much of it I just completely blanketed over and just got on with day-to-day life. And things that happened during my uni life that I was like, "Ah, it's just university." And then you look back and you're like, maybe that was a lot of suppression. Maybe that was a lot of, I'm just gonna do this so that I can block out all the pain and the feelings and all those emotions that were sitting on the surface. But I was like, yeah, we're just gonna push those back down because they don't need to surface just yet. And as I said, that's why when I came out of university. At the time, I was working at Nike, full time, at the Big Oxford Circus one, and kind of making a transition to go into a career in a different company. And it was as I was doing that full time work and having to be with my own thoughts all the time, I was like, okay, things are starting to close in when I'm not in my work mode. And yeah, I need to really look at this and identify it. And as I say, I always use a phrase about grief that kind of, it's a weighted jacket that you never take off, but the load gets easier to carry. And sometimes that weight, on some days you wake up and that weight feels heavy, even though it's not changed. And sometimes it feels a little lighter. And I think anyone who has been unfortunate to lose someone so close to them, and it is something that we all will sadly have to probably deal with in our lifetimes, it's it, it's always there. It's always there, and it's just learning what is that way that we deal with it, what is that way we cope with it, because it's so funny, we're never taught about it, but every single one of us in some way, shape, or form in our life, sadly, will experience it.
Yeah. And one thing that I always find incredibly I don't really know what the right way of putting it is, but it affects everybody so differently, doesn't it? Like, grief is one of those things that there is no one size fits all. It's like a lot of aspects of life, right? But that in particular, it's like, why am I feeling like this at this point where, you know, on the surface level, there is no relatability to the person that I'm feeling this for. You could be in a really random situation and something can hit you. And you're like, why has this hit me now? This doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Is that something you've experienced over the years, like that, dealing with it and it coming up in times where you're kind of not even expecting it to hit you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, um, one that I will always remember that sticks out to me right now is, with what I do, obviously doing all the jobs, is I travel on the tube quite a lot. And I'll never forget getting on this busy tube and seeing a man that was almost a spitting image of my dad sat down on the tube. And obviously, there's like a little like like almost like shock. Oh my gosh, is that him? But then the realization that no, that's not him. It can't be him. But it's just someone that looks like him. And it's that conversation that I have with self to be like, when those moments arise now where I have that pang, that sadness, it's also coupled with uh, a mind reframing of, okay, no, that's just him being like, I'm here, I'm seeing you, like I'm here for you. And I kind of tried to reframe it in my mind that yes, there's a pang of, realization, yeah, he's not here. But actually, in that moment, it was sadness. But okay, that's just, guardian angel style. He's there, but it's not him. So that's why I've tried to reframe it over the years. And when one thing that happens with me a lot is I have a lot of dreams, and I see him sometimes in my dreams, and I'm like, he's just checking in, and things like that. And I try and reframe it to bring an element of positivity because it's true that without the loss of my dad, I would not be the person that I am today, and everything else, and the strength and things like that. And yeah, you only get strong because you have to.
I've had this conversation with friends who lost parents quite young, and that there is often a feeling of life being very unfair in the moment. Like this person was taken from them way too young. Did you experience those feelings? Did it feel like why is this happening? Like this doesn't seem fair.
Yeah, I think, as I said, the because of the way that the diagnosis happened, and it was literally like 6 months from diagnosis to death, it was almost like, "What is going on? Like, why is this happening?" It doesn't make sense, and as I say, it felt like because I had almost that delay factor of a good almost 4 years before I actually started to feel it. It was, yeah, you have those thoughts when you get really into it. Why me? What does this mean? What is the purpose of this? Um, and for those that are religious, they can see some reasoning that way. For me, I really struggled with that. I didn't it didn't align with me, and I didn't get it. And I was like, "Yeah, but why now? Why is he taken? Why is he not here?" And it's that conversation and thought process of self. And I think that now informs one of my whys about why I do what I do now. And it's that idea that you never know when you're not going to be able to do something. You never know when you're not going to get that chance. So for me, I push myself in training. I push myself in marathons. I push myself in challenges that I've done over the years because I get to. And it's, I think, because of that, yeah, that childhood adolescence of having something taken away from me that, quote unquote, wasn't meant to be taken away from me at that young an age. In my opinion at the time, obviously, like, you don't expect to lose your dad in your teens. It's not something that you anticipate. So for me, that drive day to day to live the best that I can live and do the best I can do in anything that I try and get my hands on is because you don't know when you're not going to be able to.
Fragility of life, isn't it? Like you don't think about it on a day-to-day basis, and neither probably should you think about it on a day-to-day basis, or you know be thinking about it all the time, because that's not going to be in a nice position to be. But I think reframing it and coming back to it and understanding it, and I think some people obviously have things happen as you have that bring things into sharper focus, that is such a thing, that we genuinely don't know. Like we say that, and people say that kind of flippantly sometimes, don't they? Like, we don't know if we'll be here tomorrow, but like, no, genuinely, that is so true. And I think that's why when you have difficult situations that come up in life or things that you have to deal with, it's kind of paramount to deal with those sorts of things as quickly as you can, because you don't want you don't want things like that being your final thing. It's such a complex thing to talk about and think about, isn't it? But I think for you now, it must be something that, having gone through, has kind of reframed a lot of, as you said, your why.
Definitely. And, you know, I will stand on the hill that people who say, "Yep, I'm done with grief." I don't understand that. I feel like grief is something that is always there. Sure, it has different magnitudes. Some days it's not present at all. Some days you might just wake up as you spoke about and just kind of have this feeling. You don't know why you've got that heaviness feeling, and it's that part of learning to live with it, but also I guess, as I said, the positive spin for me, learn to live with it, but how can it also inform your life to the better so that you can get the most out of it?
You said two things that I've not really ever heard before. The weighted blanket analogy, I think, is an incredible one, because it's that feeling of, look, it's always there and it's always weighing, and if even if it gets a little bit lighter, a couple of pounds fall off that blanket, like it is still there. And also the you know the this is just him checking in. Like that is such a nice way of thinking about it, because whatever you believe and however you feel, whether that is a religious belief or a belief in a higher power or something completely different, I always think these people have been there and they will always be there because you're still here, and what they brought to you, and how he brought you up and how you got to that age, he lives through you, doesn't he? And I know that's so difficult to wrap your head around if you are suffering with grief right now, but that is like the fundamental truth of it, that the person that you're grieving because you love them and they're kind of still there with you in that capacity.
Exactly that. And it's interesting you use that phrase, "He lives in you." Um, I, as I think with a lot of people, love music, and there's a track on the original Lion King called "He Lives in You." And that was such for me when I was really going through it, hold my hands up. I used to cry to that song, but also like it's a really empowering song because it reminds you, you know, he lives in you, he watches over everything you do. Like it's inbuilt in those lyrics. And it's just that moment when you need that extra layer of almost reassurance for me in that time frame. And even now when I have those days, music is that thing that kind of pulls me up out of it. And of course, a sprinkle of Disney never hurts anyone anyway.
Exactly that. Um, I guess let's move forward and chat about that transition from the throw-in element of what you were doing to then getting back into running. Like, talk to me about that and why that kind of happened.
So as I say, throwing, I absolutely loved it. I did really love it. It was so I threw, say, discus, which was a very technical sport in its
Yes.
sense. But if you blink, the throw's over. So you have a split second of about a second to really think about what you're doing, and it's done. And sure, I got to, great successes. I won multiple county championships with it and was able to compete in that athletics arena that as I said, like that Olympic dream, I got to experience that on a national level at an event called English Schools, which was where all the counties came together and you just, yeah, had your own mini Olympics kind of based in the UK, which was incredible. Um, and the key transition, I think, was a point where, as I say, I was at Brunel University, and in my latter years, I was competing in netball training 3 times a week, 4 times a week even, and doing athletics at the same time. And within netball, there was elements more of running, and to be strong on court, you had to run quite a lot. So there, that started to filter in. And then, as I said, when I left university, I lived in a flat, well, in a room in someone's house in South London, and that was all I could afford. And for me, as I said, I knew that ingrained idea of, right, I'm currently sitting in my grief. I'm eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner from my room because I had a little mini fridge in it. That would sometimes consist of 3 bowls of cereal. And I was like, this is not, I knew it wasn't good for me. As I say, the sports science brain was like switching on and going, This is not how we're productive. This is not serving you and how great you can be." So that's when I was like, "Do you know what? Let's run." And at the time, as I say, I worked at Nike, so I was used to serving everyone, giving them gait analysis, and say that was what a big part of my job was giving gait analysis to runners and getting them to run. So I was seeing runners day in, day out, and it just, and I don't know, the dots connected, and I said, "Right, let's use this running thing. Let's do it. Like you've been doing it. And I don't even remember the moment where I was like, "Yeah, let's go." I just remember I was just lacing up my shoes, so I was out the door we went. Um, and yeah, that run was hard, but I'll never forget at the end of it, just feeling almost say that weighted blanket that I had was like, "Oh, it's just come off for a bit." I didn't feel it, and it was that mental transition of, "Oh, okay," and it almost tapped into that as I did more and more of these runs, started to be like, "Oh, actually, I could maybe get a bit faster." And I think with anyone that begins running, you find a route that is either, 20 minutes or maybe if you build up to that 5K. And I remember finding that 5K route and being like, "Huh, okay, how about I just run it a bit faster? How about I just try a little harder?" And that then became almost, as I say, I would never say running is a replacement for therapy. It's a help with, but for me, it became my therapy because I was like, right, I'm going to go out and I'm going to try and run. I'm going to try and run it harder. And that was where then my mind went. And I kept trying to build on that. And then it kind of snowballed back then. We're talking, where are we? Probably 2015, 2016. And I started to dabble in, ironically, working for Nike. As I stepped away from Nike, I then joined the running community that Nike had at the time, which was the very first, Nike run clubs before everything that there is now. Back in 2016, when we had Nike NRC and we had Pacers, and I ended up becoming a Nike Pacer for their run clubs around London. Paced at the Oxford Circus store, track we used to do hills. We used to be yeah, it was one of the first communities that I joined, and, with everything that I've said from the mental side of things and the grief, it was almost that, "Hey, there's community. There's people that I can find that I can speak to that aren't, I'm not in my insular space on my own, isolated in my own head. I'm actually with people that are doing things that I love to do." And that was kind of also the extra help that drew me out of that negative space and say that realization that running was from that point forward going to be a huge part of my life.
What does that word community mean to you? Because it's a word that we throw about in the running space. I nearly said the running community a lot, that isn't it? Like it genuinely is. We lob it around, but what does it mean, community?
It's the common interest. It's as simple as you make it. It's the common interest. It's finding people that have the same desire, mindset as you, and it's almost like an ease of being in a room where there's people there that are doing what you do because you both have the same affinity to it. And dare I say, there are some rooms that can be maybe a little bit polluted nowadays, but back then it was as simple as that. Social media was just about coming through. I was on social media from like 2012, and that was when, that 2015, 16 part, all it was about was sharing all the fun things you were doing and connecting with runners all over the world. Yes, in person at these events, but also it was the first kind of blooming of, "Oh, I'm following this runner and they're in the States and they did this event out there," and you kind of watching their journey. And that was the different side of community, not only in person, but this incredible global community that you then realized you were part of. Like it wasn't just you rocking up to do a run on a Saturday at parkrun. It was you and however many thousands of other people globally that all did it and then shared it on social media, and you were like, "Oh, they did it in that country." And it was that idea that almost that it was bigger than just you, which made you feel part of something. And I think that is a super important part of community. It's that human urge to be a part of something.
And it's hard now, isn't it? Because as you say, rooms do become polluted when things get bigger and social media gets involved and things happen. Stuff can get a bit more toxic. It's just the more people that are there, the more likely that there is going to be some sort of toxicity. And this is a really hard thing to kind of to think about. Do you think that social media in general has been positive for the running space, or do you think it's been negative?
I think I'd always say there is always a positive spin that can be taken in any sense. I think for me personally, there are some people and roles and jobs that I do now that without social media wouldn't exist. So I
Yeah.
can't say that it's been a negative fully, but I've also definitely seen the negative side of social media. Like the biggest one is people who run a certain pace aren't welcome. What's that all about? um, yeah, they're still running, So for me, that's a really big one. Oh, you don't have the latest shoes. Oh, interesting. Like, what's that all about? We're all out here just doing it. As I say, for me, it's almost coming back to that why, right? Like, I'm doing it to improve myself and my own mental well-being and ultimately my life. So if people are trying to have commentary on something that someone else is doing to improve their life, be that for community, be that for mental well-being, be that for health, why do other people deserve to have commentary on it? And for me, that's where I go back to the really simple side of things. And so yes, there is that negative on social. We can't deny it. And I think the more that you involve yourself in that space, the more you see a lot more of it and also can open yourself up to it. But it's that why. And it's just going back to that for me every time. But yes, you're right that there is a what's the word, double-edged sword to the social side of things.
Have you experienced it?
To a degree,
Yeah.
to a degree. And I think my angle is probably one that some people experience. And it's more from and it's a conversation I've had with a few people recently of the running space is still really white. And there are situations, events, opportunities that arise where it's very difficult being in that space and feeling like you're meant to be there because you're meant to be there, or you're meant to be there to tick a box. And with the growth of running community and seeing brands integrate with certain communities, there is that questioning of, are you here because you want us to be here, or are you here because it helps you in your social positivity that's out there to the world? And that's where you really have to be strong in yourself and be like, no, I'm worthy of being here, but still looking around and being like, huh, interesting. And it's a line that I think is growing more and more now that people have to challenge themselves internally, as well as these brands, hopefully, will do so too.
Yeah, and as you say, like, it should be for everybody, right? Inherently, that's what running is. And I think everything we've already said in this conversation kind of leads us to that point, right? Like, and we just said that we talked about the negative side of things and people saying, if social economically you can't afford this or that, you're not a runner. Like if you're not running in brand new carbons every time, which you shouldn't be doing anyway. But if do you
Yeah,
know what I mean? Like then you're not a runner, or if you're running this certain place, you're not a runner. And then that stretches all the way through to race, ethnicity, um, religion, like everything. And it's like, no, no, let's just fundamentally pull the curtains across here and just look at what it's supposed to be. And it's just
mhm,
supposed to be that thing that you started to get you through grief, or the thing that I started for my own reasons, or the thing that the person listening right now started for their own reasons. And it literally shouldn't matter um, an iota anything else about that person as an individual, should it? It should just be about the why.
exactly. And it's things, as we said, things are busy. Life is chaotic. There's so many reasons why something should be X or Y or Z. But as you say, when you just draw it back to the simplicity, and it's what I try to do when I get really convoluted in all these different things and almost even find myself kind of stuck in the midst of it all. It's like, okay, no, but why are you doing that? And it should be as simple as that. But hey, we're human, and it's hard not to take people's opinions, thoughts, views internally. You have to kind of get your ego and go, no, that's not a reflection of me. It's not who I am. It's their reflection of themselves onto you. So yeah, it can be super, super difficult, but there are people out there trying to push boundaries and pave the way and make space, which can also be very difficult. So kudos to those people. But it is that battle that just show up. Just keep showing up and doing what you want to do for you, because that's what counts.
I think it's quite a powerful thing to do as well sometimes, actually, just sit back and I like how many times you've said the word why in this conversation, but I think you can do this in every facet of your life, and somebody did it to me recently, with a career thing, and said like, "Why do you want to do this? Like, what is it that you want to do?" And actually, that forces you to sit back and go, "Huh, like maybe I don't actually know." And it's the same with running. If you sit there and you actually go, "Why do you run?" Like,
Mhm.
I bet it'll take a long time to pinpoint that for most people, and I think unless you have kind of like a an exact why, or like it doesn't even have to be exact, like a blanket understanding of why you actually do this thing, that's gonna help you in your entire journey. But
Absolutely.
I bet most people listening to this right now, if you just said, "Why do you run?" I can't do it, so I'm not trying to trying to be all high and mighty here. I've got many a reason, but I couldn't pinpoint the exact thing. But I think it's probably quite a powerful thing to know that exact thing.
It's a very powerful thing, and a lot of people that I bring on board to my coaching before or not even bring on board, when I'm even just having a conversation with them before we're working together, or if they decide not to, but I will start the conversation just like, "So why?
Like,
Why
well,
this y
I've
yeah,
got to
like,
think.
why this race? Why now? Why?" And it gets people into that mindset and of why, yes, why they're doing it, but also for me, it's where I believe my own mental strength and a lot of difficult challenges that I've done, physical challenges, I will always return to that why, as I said. So I try and get people that I work with to go, okay, well, if you know your why, when you don't want to get out there and go and do those lovely 10 by 400 meters, or when you don't want to go to the gym and do your strength work, what's the why? Because if your why is strong, it's going to try and get you to at least go out and maybe do at least four of those 400 and say you gave it a shot. Or it's gonna make you go, "Do you know what? I can't get to the gym, but I can do 20 minutes of that circuit 'cause I've got a dumbbell, and I can do that in the corner." So it is all pretty much, I'd say, a foundation of how I coach as well, and I say it informs a lot of the reasons why I do things.
And when you're into 4x10, 400s, you're like, "Ah, I can do 6." And then you get to 6 and you're like, "Ah, I can do 8." And then you get to 8 and you think, "Oh, I might as well just do it now." Like, that's the thing,
Exactly.
isn't it? It's like that why is the driver almost to get you to do the thing. Because when you're in it, you're gonna do it, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah,
Most of the
exactly
time
that.
anyway.
Yeah, most of the time. So that was literally me on a run last week.
Yeah.
Like, it was pouring with rain, absolutely pouring with rain. And I was in it for 10. I was like, "I could quit right now. I could really quit." And then I was like, "I'm not gonna be any more wet than I currently am.
That's
I'm I'm already outside. You've got everything, your water, your gels, there's other runners also I'm seeing running past drowned, so you may as well stay in it."
yeah. Yeah, it's that's the most runner, thought process ever, isn't it? I'm not gonna get wetter than I already am, and that's so true. Like, I don't care about running in the rain. I don't wanna start my run in the rain, really. Like, if I
Yeah,
can just start it and it's dry, I'm good. I don't really wanna step out the door and think, "Oh, no." Once I'm out and you're getting hammered on, you're like, "Oh, this is okay. I can kinda
yeah,
deal with this." Um,
exactly.
I wanna talk about kind of, the coaching side of what you do. I feel like I could speak to you forever, Emma, to be honest, but, like, when it comes to that coaching side, and we've kind of mentioned some of your fundamentals and your philosophy and kind of like what you specialize in as well. What is your feelings towards helping people? Is that something that gives you does that give you a lot of satisfaction?
I'd say aside from my why, it's probably my other purpose.
Okay.
Um, I when I was getting in once I got my strength conditioning qualification and was kind of going, yeah, I'm going to get into helping runners. Um, and that background came from what I didn't mention. My first Saturday job was 13 years old in a place called the Jog Shop in Brighton, and it was when I was
Okay.
on track. The owner came down to me and goes, "Do you want a Saturday job? Do you want to earn some money?" I was like, "Yes, of course I do." And it was in a place called the Jog Shop, and it was one of the first independent running stores of its kind in the UK. I can't even remember the years. I'm not even going to try and butcher it, but they've been going well over 30 years now. And I learned everything I know from the guy that owns it, called Sam Lambourne. And he taught me how to look at feet and how certain brands and certain shoes fitted certain shapes of feet. He showed me how to look at people's ankle movements and knee movements, how they corresponded to certain shoes at the time. And over the years, I just learnt that and kind of nurtured that through my own understanding, but also working at other independent running stores, working with podiatrists, with physios, seeing how they use shoes to help runners. And then the last job before I came to become a strength conditioning coach was an incredible place called Profeet, which is in the southwest of London. I was there for 5 years, and it is basically a sports lab on the high street. And you just learn I learned everything that you needed to know. We used to piece shoes apart, we used to cut them in half and look at the materials and how certain materials helped runners in different ways, and the reoccurring thing that I saw was that runners weren't strong. And I was like, at the time, I loved strength training. It's one of my other passions. I loved lifting barbells and was, in a dabbled in CrossFit back in the day quite a lot as well. So I loved being strong and that feeling of strength, and being able to apply that to allow me to run for longer and stronger was sort of a no-brainer to me. And yes, I had been very injured in the past, so I understood what injury was, because you name it, shin splints, IT band, runner's knee, calf pain, Achilles, all of it. I had it all. So I was like, well, how can I inform all of my knowledge and my experience to help people? And my coaching slogan became empowering you with my knowledge to optimize your inner athlete. And those three words, empower, knowledge, and optimize, are my initials. So for me, it was really kind of personal that was my next, like, why. That's why I do what I do, because I want people to go, well, knowledge should not be gate kept. I feel like there's some things out there where it's like, oh, well, I have a degree in this and I learned this. Okay, cool. Well, I want everyone to know. Yeah, I want everyone to know that. So I'm going to give you that knowledge because I've learned it and I found it exciting. But let me give it to you in a way that you can understand, that's digestible, that you don't have to go, why are they talking in a different language and talking about drop heights and how this has expensive foam that makes you do X, Y, Z? Like, what is that foam? What does it do? And why is it going to help you? So that was sort of what informed that side of things now. And as I say, coaching online, in person, in class settings as well, within gym spaces. And yeah, you can probably tell, a bit of my passion.
Yeah, the knowledge element of that is super interesting as well, because it's nice when you hear people with the kind of the fundamental or their fundamental belief, I should say, is to share knowledge. Because I think you are one of the two. You're either somebody that gatekeeps, or you're somebody that shares. There's not really much of a middle ground, I don't think. And I think the sharing of knowledge to inform people to be better in their everyday life is where that sort of growth of trust comes from sort of athletes to coach, or coach to client. Like, and when there is that element of, you can do this and this is why you do this, and you know if you do this, this is likely to help you do this. When all of that is there, that's when I think people can see their best results, and I'm sure over the years you've seen that as well. It feels like a little bit that you've got this quite analytical brain as well, and like you say about connecting things, and we've spoken about the sports science degree and all that sort of stuff. Like, do you wh- when you're coaching people, does it feel analytical to you, or does it feel personal, or is there a bit of both?
Definitely a bit of both.
Yeah.
The analytical side of me comes in when, if the person that's presented in front of me has a goal time. If they're like, "This is the goal time that I want," I will get that analytical brain out as much as I can and go, "Right, here's the macro cycle. Here's what the next 20 weeks looks like. Here's how we're gonna break that down into week by week. Here's how we're gonna break that down into session by session," and kinda give them a blueprint of where we're headed with things. Um, the personal side is, before I was a coach, I was a runner. So I get it. I still train up for races and things now. So when I have clients that are like, oh, my IT band's flaring up, like, I'm really frustrated, what should I do? There's that empathy level there, which as a runner, you understand. But as a coach, you also go, okay, how can I allow them to still keep training, but we do it in a safer way? Because I think one thing that runners hate is going to a physio or someone and being like, you need to stop everything completely. It's the worst thing. And I remember, as I say, as someone that's been very injured in the past, it's something I hated. Um, and a phenomenal coach that I had when I was at university for netball, one thing that I loved that she would always do was we'd have a fitness session on a Tuesday and a Thursday, and she would go, "You're going to show up no matter what." She's like, "If you've broken your arm, you're going to show up because you've got two working legs." If you know, and there was always a way to do it, and it wouldn't be people jumping up and down, but she would be like, "Well, you can walk around and support your teammates, or you can throw a ball with one arm. You can do some extra work with that one side." So it was almost that idea of, yes, of course, don't get me wrong. When you need to rest, you must rest, especially if it's essential. But I know for a fact when people have long-term injuries or issues, you've got to move in some way. Even if I just program, go on a long walk, it's programmed, it's in the plan. They feel like they're succeeding at something. They can tick a little box to say they've done the long walk and feel that kind of success from there. So I think that's one thing that empathy that I have of feeling what it feels like to be told, no, you can't do that. You've got to be in a boot for 6 weeks. You can't do X. Okay, but what can I do?
Yeah.
And it's
Uh,
trying to always deliver that element with my coaching. If there is people that come to me, some people come to me fully injured and they go, Emma, I need help to get back. Or they come to me as someone who's injury prone. We try not to get injured. It may happen, but then we find different ways to try and still keep moving, but in a successful way that's not being detrimental to the injury.
yeah, and I think there are so many other elements to it now, aren't there, in a world of running where there is so much product marketability when it comes from nutrition to shoes to coaching to literally to everything. And it's like you almost have to be a detective sometimes to work out, like, is this actually good for me or is this not good for me? And I would
Yeah.
imagine coming from that sort of gait analysis background as well, with that job when you were 13, like moving through to where you are now and what you've seen over the years, they're two different worlds, right? When you were selling or when you were working in that independent shop back in the day, there was no such thing as a carbon shoe. And now it's like there's a carbon shoe that's a different shape, that's got, I don't know, like, or one that's got rods, or one that's in a different shape to you, one that's like mirrors your toes, and you're like, I God, I don't know. Or there's a plastic plate, or there's Piva foam, and there's all this stuff, and you're like, what is all this? Like, how do you? How has it changed? And speaking of shoes, particularly, must be something that you see a lot of confusion around as well.
You hit the nail on the head with confusion. I think it is that just there is information overwhelm. And when you have information overwhelm, you don't know what to do. You go, okay, well, my friends run what my friends running in. And I understand that idea. And it's where, for me, the bottom line advice, even if I've done a review on a shoe and people have gone, should I run in this shoe? I will always go, get an independent gait analysis. Just get one. Because when there's so much confusion in the space, you forget that you are an individual and you run in a way that no one else runs because no one else has your body, has had your injuries, niggles, or lack of. So you don't know what shoe is exactly right for you. Your friend might get on amazingly with the shoe that they have. Just because they have doesn't mean you will. And it's for me just trying to quiet all the noise and go, let's just look at what your feet do. So, say back when I used to do it in store, I do it online now, but back when I used to do it in store, I'd be like, right, let's have a look at how you're moving. What are your ankles doing? How does that then relate to what your knees are doing? And how does that relate to what your hips are doing? And when we put you in this shoe, what happens to the knees and the ankles and the hips? Do they all do the same thing or do they get worse than when you were barefoot? And it's trying to find the different keys to the puzzle, but make sure they all fit for you rather than someone else. Um, with regards to, as you said, products, like I remember when I was 13, what's hilarious is, I saw the other day like an Air Span Nike shoe, and I was like, I remember selling the Air Span as a main shoe for a runner, and I saw it in some retro Shoreditch shop. Yeah, I saw it in some retro shop for Shoreditch, and I was like, huh, that's where we are now. Okay. Um, or like an Asics Cumulus 10. And I was like, I remember selling that, and then it's now a fashion shoe. So it's interesting how and actually Nike were at the forefront of doing that. They transition their running shoes and now all move down the line into sportswear shoes. And that's kind of where we're at with a lot of running brands. And I think, yeah, obviously weight is one of the biggest things that's changed. And the other thing is that big focus on quote unquote support shoes. That's one of the biggest things that changed. When I first was in, it was like we must stop, we must create support shoes, we must stop pronation. And then probably about 7 or 8 years ago, there's still the conversation there, but a lot more idea of, when guide rails started to come through and people talking about, guiding the foot rather than stopping the foot, because people realized if we stopped pronation dead straight, you actually created more injuries further up the chain because the body wants to move in the path of least resistance, which is what I always talk about with shoes. And there, there's many people that I've fitted running shoes over the years that you'd see them running and they're pronating through the shoe, but their knee pain's gone away because we stopped trying to stop the foot doing what it wants. So it's that weird human nature wants things to be normal, wants things to be in a straight line. But actually, if you try and stop something from rolling, if I'm stopping a foot here, what am I doing further up? Am I jamming the hip up now because the foot's not allowed to shock absorb as well? So am I making pain further up the system because I'm stopping something? And that was kind of how my learning then moved forwards, as I say, when I was in pro feet and seeing, oh, actually, maybe it doesn't need to be by the book of stopping movement. Maybe we allow movement because that's what that body needs. That's what that foot function needs. And then, as you say, now we get into the realm of everyone must run in a carbon shoe all the time, which is actually creating a lot of injuries. And a lot of people that, sometimes that are coming to me or leave me questions on socials is, I've been running in this shoe and actually that shoe isn't serving them because all they've been running in is only carbon, and it's causing their feet to hurt and getting plantar fasciitis issues and calf pain and all these other things because it's actually now detracting, and as some research is showing, it's detracting away from strengthening of the feet and lower limbs. So it is a really interesting thing, and as I say, I call myself kind of a bit of a shoe geek. I love to see where it's going to go next. I'm wondering where are we going to know next because you can only get so light, you can only get so stiff. So then, what is the next transition going to look like? Where do we go with footwear from there?
Yeah, and there will be somewhere, won't there? Because
There will.
there has to be the next thing. So you're totally right in saying like it's going to be so interesting to see where we go in the footwear space and then in the product space
Mhm.
as a whole when it comes to running, because there is this huge marketability in the place we're in right now, where there is this just enormous explosion in it. But fundamentally we always come back to that why. And I think like this conversation we've done almost what your career is, I think we've covered 15 different topics that we could
Yeah.
probably split out into a conversation each. But I did want to finish with this because I think how we started the conversation and talked about your dad and your journey into running and how that whole process of grief kind of took hold a little bit later on, but how running was the thing that helped you through it. Um, does it make you feel connected to your dad still? Because it feels like running was there when you needed it to be there, but also almost that you know it has him in it as well.
Definitely. I think it's the time when my mind is at its quietest, but also in the same breath at its busyness, like busiest, because I don't have really to think about anything else that's going on day to day. And I can allow those subconscious thoughts to come through. And yeah, it is moments when, definitely not every day, but once in a blue moon, I'm out there thinking, like, how did I get to this point? And then, yeah, he comes up, when I'm like, how did I get to being training, running 3 hours out here in the pouring rain like I was last week? And it's like, yeah, no, this is that why. Um, so yeah, it does. And I think it's, as I say, it just reminds me of that privilege, when things are hard, when the run's tough, when life is spinning around, it's that, okay, cool, but I'm here and I think I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing. Um, and that's kind of how I've followed through my career. Some people would be like, oh, I have a plan, I have a 5-year plan, I have this. I can genuinely say that I just have followed where my passion has gone, and that's what's led me through. And obviously, yeah, with his guidance in the background always there, just kind of trusting and following my why and seeing where it kind of ends me up, really.